Okay, so I don't need to introduce myself. That's great. So I'm going to be talking about this project that we Atmosphere Industries engaged in with the partnership of Edge Lab at Ryerson University, and which was funded by the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada. The project was called Gaming Privacy, and the large goal overall was to create a game that would teach kids about online privacy literacy. So that was the broad goal, but we had some more specific goals, which really generally just revolved around moving beyond the assumptions that we place on online privacy. So kids, when they learn about online privacy, they tend to be told to memorize certain skills and dangers. And there's a strong focus on things like stranger danger. We wanted to look at broader, reusable fundamental skills. And we thought that the best way to do this, and possibly the only good way to do this, is actually work with kids, figure out what those should be, and figure out and create the game with them according to what they think it should be. So we started on this series of workshops with 7 kids. They were 8 to 10, and it lasted 4 months. And we had a number of components in this. We started with the privacy discussion, of course. Now I should note that I'm not the researcher on this. My the co-lead, Kate Rains-Goldie, she's sort of the research professional, so I can't really talk too much about this. But the most salient thing we got out of this process was a confirmation that really these kids were being taught primarily about stranger danger and avoiding online predators, not really taught so much about relationships between users and online companies, and how to trust websites and online companies. But they were aware of it, which was interesting. Like one of the kids actually had this kind of this funny metric, which was the longer the terms of service, the less you could trust the company. So there was an awareness, but it needed to be developed. So we decided to explore that more. And then moving past that, we taught the kids a little bit about game design so that they could evaluate a series of prototypes, starting from really basic ones. And they really were elementary at the start because we wanted to engage the kids right at the start of the ideation process. And so with the skills that they learned, they were able to have meaningful discussions and direct the prototypes using those skills. And from there, we also went on to have them build the story world, which I will touch upon briefly in a moment. So based on that, we formed some specific goals, and I just realized that the iPad that's supposed to have my time isn't, so I'm guessing here. Oh, great. Okay. So we developed some more specific goals based on working with the kids. So the kids and we agreed to focus on teaching the ability to make trust and risk judgments about online entities. And we developed a 3-stage heuristic for people who essentially what we all do, or what we should be doing when we make these assessments. So it starts with collecting information, asking friends, teachers, parents, reading blog posts, news reports, terms of service. From there, you go on to using that information. You evaluate the trade-offs, what is gained, what is lost, what is required of me if I want to do this thing online. And from there, we go on to critical reflection. So we experience the consequence of our choices, and then we think about what were those consequences, and what can I learn based on this. And that's and throughout, but especially at this part, there's a need to have a process of discussion and reflection that we really wanted to draw out in the game. And of course, there was one really big design goal that the kids were adamant about, which is, I think, not news to a lot of people who work with kids. But they really resisted attempts to make the game about show specific issues, and I'll touch on how we dealt with that. So this is what we ended up making. The game is called The Watchers, a trailer by Sega Nii, who might be in the audience. I'm actually going to finish within the time limit. I'm going to do it. So as I was talking about storytelling, so it's essential. I wonder if I can. Yeah, great. So storytelling was essential to keeping the kids engaged, but it was also really necessary for contextualizing the choices and the consequences that form the meat of the game. Without those characters and without that world, the choices and the consequences really lack weight, and it's hard to really make the kids care about them. In addition, the storytelling allowed us to address some abstract issues that would be hard to translate into gameplay, so things like data collection, info leakage, corporate motivation. These are the whys and the hows of the outside world that could really only be done through incorporating stories. With the story and through the gameplay, we incorporated this process of defamiliarization, or we could call it abstraction, but it's the strategy of opening familiar things for investigation by making them somewhat strange. So, for instance, we have this hat net, which we don't have internet in the game. We have hat net that works kind of like you see there, and it's a metaphor for the internet. So this was our approach to dealing with the "don't make it edge a game" thing. There's nothing about online privacy in here, but everything in it is a metaphor that can be related to that world. So the meat of the game is this process of completing investigations, unlocking consequences, and making choices based upon those consequences that you discover. So this is where the heuristic enters the gameplay, and that brings me to my next point, which is one of the early struggles that we faced with the prototypes was how gamey should we make this game. Now we know scaffolding from things like having tutorial levels in games or increasing difficulty in games over time, but it's also really good for introducing high-level skills like the ones we want to teach. So you can't just throw someone into making those practicing those high-level skills. You need to start by with clear, familiar processes, and gaminess. Familiar game components are really good at this. So we had some earlier prototypes that weren't very gamey. They were more like a raw simulation, but players were very lost and confused when they were asked to make decisions within that framework. So we have things like here are the skills you're using. Here are the skill cards. They say the skills that you're using, and we have tool cards that encapsulate the heuristic within a familiar game element. That's a microcosm of the larger process. Or we have this is sort of a representation of the core process of making a decision at the end of each mission. Here's a structured decision you need to make. It never deviates. There's always 3 options, 2 consequences for each option, and that never deviates. So that's a safe structure, and you get to know it. But the actual decision itself does force you to think. One last thing, I said I was going to talk about one of the reasons we made it a board game. That was because, like I was saying, we really wanted to have discussion and debate. And that's really had to do with the digital game. Even if you go multiplayer, it's really hard to have meaningful dialogue. So through the board game, you have a group of people. It's collaborative, it's cooperative, and we actually specifically encourage discussion at the 2 decision points where you have to make a decision in the game based on your 3 options. And what was interesting, this worked very well. The kids naturally formalize a debate process for making those decisions. So I am now done, and the game isn't available yet, but it will be at watchersgame.com. You can follow the project at Gaming Privacy on Twitter. We're going to be talking at InPlay next month, and that's when the game will be available. And we'll also be talking with some of the kids who were part of the workshops. So that'll be fun. Thank you very much.